may rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have the roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron.
Here.
Julie Simpson.
Here.
Jeff Bard.
Here.
Robin Cleek. Here. Wes Pullen. Here. Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here.
Fast.
Everybody's here. Nick is absent. In his place, Dr. Liali is with us. Nick is sick. And hence the comment of hazmat suits because it's been going around. We have a presentation scheduled for John Powers School Programming by Miss Bugela, and she is sick too, so that presentation is canceled.
Yikes.
We have a few presentations, and because we have presentations by the DLR group and the LAMP group, I think I'm going to move their presentation up, and then we'll do the rest of us, which is in-house district presentations. So the first thing about the kindergarten building update is the only update I have since our last meeting is the Cook Memorial Library had their board meeting, and in that meeting they approved the access road for us to go from our building towards the atrium.
Off of Phillips.
Off of Phillips. Sorry, off of Phillips. So they approved that. That is, and we are very thankful for them too, because it will help us in our transportation, and it would help the DLR group to design the roads for us. But that was something that was taking a long time, and so we are very thankful that that got resolved. The next, the presentation is an updated projected costs information by the kindergarten building by DLR Group and LAMP, and this is so that we can go out to bid, right?
Yeah, close.
So since Nick is not here, you're going to have to help me out here.
Okay, sure, no problem. So we're done with design, and so you guys come up. We completed design on December 19th, and so what's left to be done is construction documents. So the construction documents and the specifications will be prepared for bid pending your authorization of design development. And so our presentation tonight is twofold. One, we have updated cost information from schematic design to design development. So that's basically from the fall to today, here in January. And Tom's going to present that. And then we have some design revisions to reconcile those costs. So as a part of the normal process, we see fluctuations in trade packages. I believe Nick forwarded the board the cost estimate over the weekend or just before the weekend. So you get to see some of those cost variances between some of the trade packages and how things have started to balance themselves out. In general, as we've looked at these cost priorities, we have prioritized square footage and operating costs above aesthetics and wall types. And so you'll hear a little bit about that from the team. Knowing that obviously enrollment is certainly an issue here, as well as the long-term operating cost of the facility, because obviously the first cost is a small percentage of the overall cost of the project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom and the team, and they'll walk you through it, and then we'll answer any questions that you have.
Jason, 1 minute.
Sure.
So today you're going to present us with the design, the construction documents have to be prepared, right? So,
Correct.
So what we are seeing today has to be approved at by the next board meeting.
So that we can proceed into construction documents and then go out to bid in the spring.
Okay. So I just wanted to know the timeline of
Correct.
when you wanted. So you wanted the approval by next of this reviewed design.
Correct.
Okay.
Just to proceed into the next phase. So
Okay.
as we agreed when we started the process, we would come at the end of each phase, give an update to the board, and then seek your approval to continue into the next phase.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. Sorry.
Sure.
No. So with that, I'll just run through the updated cost estimate really quick. Since we last met, a lot more detail has become available. Drawings have become much more developed. We've had the opportunity to send those documents out to some local subcontractors, get some more feedback from kind of what they're seeing, where costs are coming in, those sorts of things, and just really keep working to refine the number so hopefully it's as accurate as possible moving through each and every phase. Right now, on the right-hand side, you can see it's our typical same format you've seen in the past. The construction costs up at the top is the $9.2 million, and then trickling on down, we have the design contingencies and the construction contingencies. Well, one thing you'll note is we have zeroed out the design contingency at this point. We've talked how in the past that those costs that we were carrying last time, which is about $440,000 give or take, will be kind of absorbed up into the construction costs at some point. And at the point we feel now, we feel comfortable enough to lower that number just with the detail that we have, where the numbers are coming in. We feel comfortable lowering that at this point. We're still going to carry the 5% construction contingency, moving pretty much obviously through construction, through bidding. Some of those dollars will get converted into allowances for each trade package, those sorts of things that we've talked about as well. The fees, general conditions, all that stuff has stayed pretty constant and consistent. The winter conditions, we're still not carrying anything for those at this time. Right now we're still on schedule to get started, where we shouldn't have to incur any of those fees, but if things become delayed, we might have to start looking at incurring some of those costs. So then basically that totals down to the bottom, $11,998,055. This still does not include anything for the road or the site work for that matter. They're still working on the design for that. The site work associated with the building, we have some placeholders in there for that to the best of our knowledge that we have right now. But we are still waiting for developed drawings from the civil engineer to really refine those costs and incorporate those as well. But for right now, nothing with the road, as you mentioned earlier, was approved to go through. None of those costs are really accounted for yet in this update. And then the permit costs are still under review as well. Nick, I think, has been having some conversations with the village over the last few days on what we'll need to incur. Some might be waived, those sorts of things. Those conversations are starting to happen. So we'll continue to update those as soon as we get that information as well. The next slide, just a quick trade package breakdown.
Could we go back a minute?
Oh, sure.
Okay. You said, the road work, we are hoping that, our partners will help us out. But when you said that there's no site work contingency in there, what about that? Who was going to incur that?
Well, as far as the road goes, I think that was still up for discussion.
Yeah. Like we might get help, we might not, but I know that. So, but
yeah, and Nick was here. I'm sure he could speak to it.
They're meeting on the 10th with the village and the park district and the library again on the 10th to talk about that the road.
I know the road, but I'm talking about the site work. Like the site is ours, so wouldn't we incur the costs on that, or
those costs are included? Can I jump to the next slide?
Sure.
I'll show you. Under the excavation trade package, toward about the bottom third. 31A excavation. That is developing our site. The pad that the building will go on is included right now, but we still don't have actual engineer drawings from the civil engineer. So we're carrying prices, allowances to cover that work until we get those refined drawings from the civil engineer. So to develop the site that the building is going to go on, we do have costs in for that, but it's the road that gets us in and out of that site if we're not utilizing the parking lot that's there.
So that site work belongs to the road, not to our building.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
As I mentioned, so this is just a breakdown of the trade packages. As Jason mentioned, there's always fluctuations with some of the numbers. Just the key is to eventually balance off down at the bottom. Some stayed pretty consistent. Some had some changes just based on different materials, a little more info on what the design criteria is going to be for those certain items, things like that. Also, there were some cost-cutting measures already implemented to get down below the $12 million range. Jason will go into more detail on that as well. And as always, through the entire project, we're always looking at different ways to even save some more dollars if those possibilities become available. So we'll continue to do that as well. design, or
Any other questions on
if
the
you had
cost estimate?
questions?
What are some potential areas where we could save additional costs?
We've looked at some square footage, Jeff, as I mentioned earlier on. We've prioritized right now materiality and those sorts of things, some construction, some wall types. Our next step would be to prioritize square footage. And so we have a drawing, I believe, at the end of the slideshow that would show you what some of those square footage reductions would be and then an associated cost savings with those. So if you're interested in seeing those, we can certainly share when we get that far.
But after this next approval step, we're pretty much beyond that point, right?
Well, at the next approval, we're at alternate bids and things like that for the bidding process itself. But then we will have exercised basically all of the design control or the large part of the design control that we have to get to the bidding process. So from there, it's additive bids or deductive bids against certain other items in the building, systems, if you will. We haven't really touched much in the systems. As I mentioned too, we've prioritized the operating costs, so the HVAC really hasn't changed. The low voltage includes lighting controls and things like that that will help with daylight harvesting, so you don't have to have the lights on all the time and those sorts of things. So we've again tried to preserve those as elements, but those are cost levers that you could still choose to use if you wanted to further simplify.
The two columns, the SD and the DD, am I reading that right, that is like what you thought it was going to be versus what it actually is? And then the variance is how much you were off by exceeding it or underestimating it?
Yeah.
Is that what that is? Like, am I understanding that breakdown?
The SD budget was the numbers we showed you last time.
Okay.
And then the DD budget is where we're at right now, based on the current feedback from subs, updating quantities, things like that.
But since we haven't actually gone out to bid, what are the chances that even this number won't stay very firm? Because once we approve this,
We'd hope it's more firm than the SD to this phase, but yes, I mean, there always are the possibilities for fluctuations, but with some of the feedback we've got from some subcontractors, some harder numbers, we hope that they should stay pretty close.
okay.
So are you
And
going to do one more estimate?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, even before we come back, I'll continue to update it as more information becomes available. So yes.
So there's at the end of construction documents, the board will authorize the drawings to go out to bid. At that time, you'll have a third estimate by which we'll have even obviously greater specificity and an opportunity to measure those even against the more current market conditions. So ever closer, we have that much more better information about the market. And we have seen, Tom, maybe you can speak to this, some market fluctuations as a result of a positive bidding climate. Contractors are starting to pick up steam. And so we want to make sure that we're honest about that, right? October was a different situation than we're in January. And likewise, we'll see some further fluctuations as we get closer to bidding in the spring. So we want to make sure that we stay on top of it, and we still do have opportunities to cut costs if we need to. And in a best case scenario, we have an opportunity through alternate bids to add value back to the project. So.
okay. I know at a prior meeting you mentioned that the village and the park district had already sort of given their, tentative approval on the design of the building as far as the aesthetics and the fit with the neighborhood and stuff from the outside. But again, I'm hearing like there might be some trade-offs with square footage. And I think, wouldn't a better trade-off be on the outside material?
We've done that to get to this number.
Because I'm going, like, first and foremost, to me, it seems like it should fit with the building it's already attached to. And that would look, just on appearances, and I'm no expert, it would look like that would save us money if it matched the Sullivan Center's exterior versus the one that you guys designed is beautiful, but it looks more upgraded.
Yeah, and you'll see that reflected in the drawings that Jason's about to present.
Okay.
All right. So with that, we're going to jump to the floor plans. As Jason
I just
said,
have a quick question before we move on. Jason, will you be touching on, because if you go back to that slide with the variances,
Yep.
Are you going to be touching on what caused the estimate to go up and like, for example, 3B1, 5A1, and 27A1. Like, pretty significant increase. And then also to what was changed with the flooring for 9F1 for the cost to go down that much.
We took an alternate, well, we'll get to it, but we took an alternate.
I mean, if you're going to touch on it when you're going through, then
Yeah,
that's
and
fine.
Like the low voltage number, Wes, a large part of that was we have to run fiber from Middle South to the new building. It's 1,000 feet of fiber.
Okay.
Things like that. So as more specificity has come in after we met with Dimitri and his team, we've been working back and forth. This is something that was expected as things begin to balance out, as more detail becomes known in schematic design. It's conceptual in nature, although it has a lot of specificity to it. Now, as we get ever closer, we're starting to enable some of the cost-cutting measures to balance some of the necessities, like this fiber run. So that was $100,000 worth of fiber from one side of the street to the other.
Okay. Makes sense.
So, but the cost cuttings, as you point out in 9F, was changing to VCT flooring.
Okay.
So it's just that balance. You're seeing that balance occur.
No, that's what we just wanted to know. If you
Sure.
could
It makes
highlight some specificity to us so that we understand it a bit better.
We'll keep going, and then we'll answer questions as we go.
Okay. So looking at the floor plans, as Jason said, to maintain the integrity of the program that we have worked so far to date, and also to try and keep things like building performance, energy efficiency at the top of our list. And we started to look at the materials as places where we could look at alternate options that would still give an excellent aesthetic to the building, but are more cost-effective materials that we could use on the exterior. One that Jason already brought up that you've kind of seen already was the flooring. So we've looked at a bunch of different materials and reviewed them with some people in the district. So we've talked about a hard flooring throughout the building, and we kind of arrived at an LVT product to begin with, but the VCT product was considerably more cost-effective and still gets us a very similar appearance and similar pattern that we've been looking at already. On the exterior of the building, when we start to look at the renderings, one thing you'll notice is that around admin, we've circled that around admin and multipurpose. Materials we were looking at there before were like a brick inlaid precast and like a metal panel clad exterior. We decided to go with an all precast clad exterior. So the expression that's on the outside is precast concrete, and we can achieve a similar pattern and a similar color with the precast concrete that we would have gotten with the brick and metal panel. Similarly, on the north elevation, if you remember, the north elevation had some overhangs and some kind of fun expressions to it, and some more punched openings. We looked at some alternate materials there also, and looked at doing a metal panel and mix of metal panel and storefront on the north elevation. So ultimately, we get in more daylight, we get more windows, but we get a less expensive north elevation fenestration. And also the operable doors throughout some areas. We looked at some areas where those doors were less effective than others. So where there was the small group breakout spaces on both pedals and both floors, we had a pocket door solution there that would let the spaces kind of flex into each other. But we're getting those were a pretty expensive option, but we looked at doing a swing door instead, still possibly keeping those pocket doors as an alternate when we go out to bid, but doing a swing door, something that we can hold open, that we can swing 180 degrees, that would still let the flexibility work between the spaces, and considering the materials whatever materials we select for those doors, we can still get a similar function out of that wall that we would have with the operable sliding door. Also looking at what is the studio, art studio, and dramatic play on the second floor. Jump up to the second floor also. We had an operable door there, but looking at the adjacency of that space, what was adjacent to a landing here or adjacent to the multipurpose room on the first floor, it was just as effective to do transparent glass wall with some operable doors, swinging doors there instead of a folding glass wall where we could open up the entire wall. And we have some side-by-side comparisons on where we were at the end of schematic design versus where we are at the end now of design development, looking at some of the changes that we've seen. So to, again, admin here is the large volume in the foreground and that in the background, and that's looking at the change in the roof profile. So going from the brick and metal panel clad exterior precast, switching to just a pre-finished precast, it's easier for us just to turn that into a parapet condition as opposed to having an overhang. And again, this is not anything that's affecting the performance of the building. So we still have a high performing building. This is from the east elevation, kind of the northeast corner of the building. You can tell here the admin expression has changed a little bit, but also the north elevation has changed considerably from what it was before, from a series of punched openings in masonry to more of a banded condition facing the north side of the building. Again, this maintains the integrity of the program that's behind it, but lets in a lot more daylight, so kind of a bit of a trade-off.
Did any of these design changes incorporate comments that the village trustees had at the meeting? None of you were at that meeting, but I didn't know.
They didn't have any.
They didn't have the comments, or okay?
They didn't have many comments at that meeting. Just
No, they did. There was one of the trustees had a comment regarding the exterior, trying to match it similar to the Sullivan Center.
yeah, I mean that was the comment they had, but they didn't have anything regarding the windows or the daylight or any of that stuff.
Right.
I think in the design we had before, at the end of schematic design, we were trying to borrow a lot of elements from all the neighbors, not just the Sullivan Center. We were looking at the library and the housing complexes adjacent to it, kind of borrowing elements and materials from all of those buildings to kind of compose the design that we had at the end of schematic design. Some of those elements from the library still remain. Some of the metal panel folds and stuff like that you see that are common to the design of the library are still here. And I agree, it does look a little bit more like the Sullivan Center now at the end of design building than it did at the end of schematic design. This is the corner of the building from the northwest corner. So this will be the corner that's facing the parking lot against the library.
So you've added additional windows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was more cost effective for us to do more windows than it was to do the punched windows in the large masonry wall.
So that's on the west side?
That's the north side.
North side, okay.
We're facing the library. We're at the library looking back, if you will.
How are the extra windows going to affect the heating and cooling costs, though?
Actually, it's a benefit. It's about a $4,000 energy savings.
Really?
And we don't get heat gain from light on the north side of the building because there's no direct sunlight. We just get the nice ambient light, the soft light.
And the west elevation that faces Aspen Drive, again, looks pretty similar to what it was last time, but simplified and a bit more cost effective. Do you want to just the plan?
Yeah, sure. Now, Tom, do you have a number? Because as was mentioned earlier, they had some questions about some of the line items. What was the cost savings associated with these aesthetic changes?
The big one, changing the north elevation to the full glass, getting rid of some of the banding, was $132,000 in the savings. So obviously a pretty substantial one that, without really changing the functionality of the building.
You want to go to the floor plan?
We're going to jump ahead here. We have a few more larger views. So we had to go through. This was our estimate, looking at if we made a plan change to the building. So looking at what would be the easiest part of the building that we could remove from the plan.
Is your mic on? I'm sorry.
Yes. Is it on?
Not hearing you very well.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll try to speak up.
Okay, thanks.
So looking at the floor plan, what was the most effective area that we could remove from the building that would get us the most bang for our buck in terms of a budget, reducing the budget, but still not be a significant change to the program. Looking at this area, we were looking at a savings of
493. So you can see this gets us just below 11.5 million on the estimate. The area of the red X there, and is the area that would get eliminated, and then the two pedals would be pushed together, so that you would have basically a set of double doors that would enter into this portion of the room when it's slid over, and then the same on this portion. So you'd have a pair of doors on either side of that, get you into the maker space. So functionally, the pedals would still work the same way that they do. The sensory room and the studio space, the dramatic play space, would be sacrificed in the name of primary classrooms.
So
Would this be the same thing that would happen up? So the dramatic,
Same.
the dramatic would be gone too. So okay.
now, several meetings ago, when I was upset that we weren't getting as many classrooms as we had initially anticipated, my consolation prize was supposed to be that that's a flexible space to turn into a classroom one day. So now what?
It was the maker spaces. It was the green.
It was the dramatic play studio.
Yeah, it was everything could be
combination
converted.
There was a range depending on the amount of capacity. There were different options related to the capacity of enrollment. So that this would be one of those options where.
Carrie, I'm sorry. Could you guys sit down so that you're talking into these mics? I think that's the problem. Thanks.
Okay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you.
So at one of the previous meetings, we went through some different layout options and how it would potentially affect enrollment and capacity. And that was, Robin, a comment that you had. How can we balance and have the additional classroom spaces? This would be one of those trade-offs where if you wanted to reduce costs, it would be square footage elimination. You wouldn't then have that space to be able to have a higher enrollment capacity down the road.
Right, except now I feel like we've sacrificed that and sacrificed the initial plan to set out of how many kindergarten classrooms we were going to build.
Well,
So-
this is here to illustrate if you wanted to save additional. Right now, the way the budget has been shown to you tonight, we're underneath the $12 million budget mark. This is to show you an alternate path of getting further below that, should you desire, but it wouldn't be at sacrificing square footage.
Which might be a realistic possibility given we haven't built that road yet and we're not sure where the money's coming from.
That's still the most significant unknown that
Right.
we have,
Correct.
is that road.
Right.
No question.
Okay.
Are there
So
any?
we wanted to come with, an additional option to give you a preview of what else you could do. Now, there are some other things that we can still do that would reduce costs, but not at a significant level. In other words, we could probably save several thousand here and several thousand there, but not at, this is a really big lever to pull. This is $500,000 if you wanted to control, 493, almost exactly $500,000 in savings to do that. And then when you run it through all the contingencies and things like that, you get down to that 1146 number. So it's quite a bit of cushion now. I don't know, Tom, if you have an opinion about the road work and order of magnitude of what that might be the maximum, or if that's too early to hazard a guess.
I'd hate to throw a number out right now, not seeing anything on a drawing. So right now I'd rather not answer something until I saw something on paper. I think last time we were carrying 150,000 down there. That was just kind of a number, but again, that was very preliminary. Just hoping it would get us to and from, but it could definitely be more than that depending on what the final design comes out to be.
And the road would be designed by the civil engineer and the village.
I believe so, yes. If that's Walt
T. Walt
Hamilton, they're under contract.
So
now,
they will
yes,
design
they'd
it
be
and
the
then
one.
they'll let us know that this is what we have to build.
Yeah.
I had a question. It has taken us a while just with the number of bodies involved in getting the solution to a road. So, it might take us some more time to get to that final commitment of anybody committing to, help us out, whether, how much we put in or how much they help us out with in the financing of it. So, in 2 weeks' time, because we have to prepare construction documents and we have to go out to bidding because we don't want to, and I'm not sure if, I want to know from your expert opinion, if we don't have any of those numbers in the 2 weeks' time when we approve this for next meeting to meet all our other document deadlines, how does that affect us? Like if everybody comes and says, no, you have to build the road and the estimate comes up to be way more a number, but we have sent documents out for construction bids and stuff. Like how does that process work? If somebody pays for it and we are good, right? But what happens if we approve the main plan without sacrificing square footage, because that is the premium. We don't want to sacrifice it. We want as much space as possible. But then somebody comes and tells us, no, the road is yours to build. Then what do we do?
Well, you're right. It has been a long road, no pun intended, to get to the point where we have an understanding at least of a design intent. And so I can't speak to the timeline of when the various parties would say that, they want to participate or they don't want to participate in the cost. But you have some risk in the form of design fees to have us keep going. And then let's say we stopped in a month, in end of February, because you realized at the time that you had to, make some difficult decisions whether or not you wanted to reduce square footage or whether or not you wanted to do some other things to make that if there was a budget that you had to assume. So the risk that you have is the engineering fees, the design and engineering fees between the time you approve and the time you find out that information. But we'll come back at the end of construction documents, if not sooner, if that other information becomes available, and you can reconcile it at that time. But that's the best we can do. If you choose not to proceed at the end of this month, then we know we're going to incur additional costs in the form of winter conditions. And so,
that cost is, how much did you, how much was it?
I don't have that one with me.
It was about 300, 400.
Yeah, it can vary depending on
like which
per
stage
month.
we are in.
Yeah. For if we get approved a month later, it'd be X amount of dollars. If we get 2 months later, it'd be that much more.
Okay.
So yeah, I can get you that information for the next meeting, though.
No, I mean, by next meeting we need to approve, right? Because we have to meet these certain deadlines and certain dates to keep going. But so I just want to know.
It would have to be a comparison of the cost of the winter conditions or the potential thereof against the cost of the architecture and engineering fees to see what that trade-off is. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if you asked us to keep going, then we would be expending dollars at a certain rate, and then the winter conditions would be expending dollars at a certain rate, which is faster,
Oh, yeah.
So go ahead, sorry.
I'm just thinking, our original plan did not have that road in consideration, right?
Right.
Correct.
So that was just a add-on later. So if we take away the road in terms of as an option, that's where we started from. So
Yes.
this road now is just something, to me, is like, would be great to have, but it's not necessary for
Yes.
this to move forward.
Yes.
So
Is that what the village said?
I was going to
Yes.
say.
I thought they said they didn't want anything out on Aspen.
They would prefer not to have anything out on Aspen, and that's why they helped us to get the approvals from the necessary parties to
Okay.
get it. But it is not. But we have made our position very clear to everybody involved, including the
Okay.
village, the park district, that we don't have the money.
Okay.
So
So we could proceed with the original plan using the existing parking lot, using that turnaround, using all the staging area there, not needing that road
yes,
with this plan. And then if, and then that's, to me, it seems like that comes later in terms of, hey, what are we going to agree to and what are the other parties willing to do? And then whether or not it's worth it to us to do whatever we need to get that road. But I don't see it playing together with this as a deciding factor right now in terms of moving forward.
No, I agree. The other thing was, would anything change with or without the road, like in our building itself? Like, would that be too much of a change? Like, right now we proceed assuming that the building is there. So, our drop off, pick up, whatever things that you had designed are that way, then the road doesn't happen. Would that be a significant amount of change that you would have to
we
make?
designed it to function without the road.
Yeah.
We actually designed it to face the parking lot and not necessarily the east-west connection that's being proposed and the north-south connection that's being proposed.
Okay.
But Jason, to your question, it's possible that the village could hold up your permits if they so chose.
It is possible, but my understanding was they've already approved, saying what we presented to them did not have the road. So
There are two more approvals that you actually,
Okay.
probably three more approvals that you require. A zoning change from the existing special use to allow school. And then they're now considering that since the building is owned by the Park District, that the village would be the person, or the entity rather, issuing the permit and not the Regional Office of Education for construction. So that changes some of the approval metrics. Through the regional office, there aren't any permit fees and those sorts of things. And as was mentioned earlier, that's kind of what's being discussed about how that works. Now, the village has waived permit fees for the library in the past, so maybe that is a moot point. But nevertheless, now there's a process that we have to go through on the building side that we didn't anticipate that we would have to do. So we have a couple more village meetings to get through before we're on to the point where we can construct.
2 days we'll know.
Hopefully.
I have two questions. The one that says delete art studio if we chose to reduce the square footage. Does that mean art is on a cart? Does that mean that was just a separate kind of theatrical art studio / dramatic play?
No, that was going to be utilized for art class.
So that would mean we
So
no
it would
longer
move
have
into
an
the
art
maker.
classroom.
It would probably move into makerspace, or it would go on a cart and go in the classroom.
Okay. And then is it ever a thing from the village or the regional board of education? Would we be able to possibly get them to put in writing that road isn't going to necessarily become mandatory and that's just a preference? Or I really don't want to get backed up against a wall at the last minute on that.
It's a question for the village, not the regional office.
Okay. So we might be able to nicely ask.
They're having jurisdiction. They're the ones to tell you need a road or not.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other information that do we need before the next meeting? I think we need to ask within this week so that would it be possible for you to send us just a winterization, just a rough estimate? It doesn't have to be really, strong, but just, if we are delayed by a certain amount, just so that we have that information with us. Anything else anybody else would like, which relates to the design and stuff? Because if we have to make the decision by next meeting, in the meantime, we have, Nick has a meeting with the village, so we probably will get a memo or report saying if any decisions were made during that time. So, and we can let everybody know, but since the decision has to be made pretty soon, if there's any information you need, email Nick and we can forward it to you guys to get some more details to us if we.
And I'm just confirming the multi-purpose space is what's planned for lunchroom cafeteria use, right?
Correct.
And
As well as music.
music.
Okay.
And large motor activities outside of the gym. So it's sort of a
Multi-purpose, if you will. Imagine that. Where did they come up with that clever name?
Okay, let us know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jason and Carrie. Jason's and Carrie. Our next presentation will be Miss Lynn Barkley for the 2018-19 school year calendar.
At this meeting, it's been presented at the last meeting. I'm going to try not to cough like everybody else up there. I sent Nick and Wendy on Friday, I believe you have it in your packet, the survey results that we got from all the teachers. This year I also sent out the survey to all the PTO officers looking for representation of all of our buildings, and got a nice response from them. And I don't see who actually votes, but it went out to them, and I did talk with Wendy, the PTO president, to make sure that they did get received. So I believe in your packet you have the results. Overwhelmingly calendar choice 1, which is similar to this year. So it's up for any discussion, questions, or anything else you want us to take a look at this time.
Lynn, you would put in the dates for our early release and Teacher Institute days and stuff after the calendar is approved, right? Like now, whether it was choice 1 or choice 2, after, since one has overwhelmingly been supported, you will now put in the dates for those? Or were they put in before? I'm sorry.
They should have been put in before.
Or they were put in before. I'm sorry.
The
I don't have
recommended
the
dates. The only one that changed significantly this year, Lisa can address that one.
Sure. We've typically had our last Institute Day in May, and I requested that we move it in 2019 to March 1st. Is that right? Because there's a multi-district consortium opportunity for us to participate in professional development with other districts in the area. And I'm involved with the curriculum directors of those districts as well, and they've already begun planning. We've never been able to participate just due to the date of our Institute Day. And I'm not sure that we're going to participate yet, but I think it would be nice if we had the opportunity to. All of the districts are investigating, looking at diversity and closing the achievement gap. So I'd like to be able to participate if we can. Some of those districts are Stevenson, 96, 75, 76, Fremont, 102, 103.
And then the early release days that were submitted were very similar to the ones that we had this year.
Okay. I wanted to make sure we had those, like none of them was, as I was mentioning, that none of them coincided with too close to each other. So because it's hard for working parents when they are off, like both Monday and Monday and Friday,
Understood.
But other than that, I didn't have anybody else.
So
We'll
then at the next
approve it next meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Did we approve it at the next meeting,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Feel better.
Go home.
You feel better.
Thanks.
Everybody is like,
Go home.
Get out of here.
that is approval at the next meeting. Lots of approval at the next meeting. Okay. The 2018-19 transportation fee recommendation.
Good evening. The recommendation for the 2018-19 transportation fee is to maintain it at $395 per student for next year. We had 62 students pay for busing in 2016-17, which resulted in about $24,500. The recommendation is to keep it the same for next year as well.
I had a question on that. We have a significant increase coming in on our transportation costs from what you had shown us with the lakeside. I know we were going to go out to bid and all that, but overall, I assume the costs are going to go up. Even with the costs going up, you don't recommend an increase in the fees.
Traditionally, we've looked at the year prior to determine the following year's fees. So for 2019-20, we would look at the increase would be coming in for 18-19.
Plus, it looks like it wouldn't generate enough money to stick it to our families anymore.
No, but it's a significant cost. Just wanted to make sure we but not.
Do we look at how many of our students actually ride the bus versus how many are eligible to ride the bus? You know, do we have routes where we're a quarter full instead of the planned amount based on where they live? You know what I mean?
You'd like to know the usage percentage?
Yeah,
Yes.
because
per
so
route?
many people, so many parents drive their kids. Maybe some of our routes could be readjusted to pick up kids who we know are going to take the bus versus kids who we know are not going to take the bus, even though they're both eligible to take the bus.
I do know usage does fluctuate. It starts out heavy, and then there's dips, peaks and valleys. We can look into that.
I was just wondering.
I think kind of the hard part about some of that, though, is like, depending on extracurriculars, you know, there might be a 10-week stretch where I pick my kid up every single Wednesday, but then that activity ends and now they're back on the bus on Wednesdays. It's just not, I don't know how constant that kind of stuff really
And it's weather dependent too.
is. Yeah, it's very much so.
Yeah, or if like somebody has their kid in HAP, so they don't normally take the bus, but one day they have the day off and they don't want
Right.
to drive their kid, so they need the bus one day out of a month, but it has to be provided.
I think the trickier thing this next year will be the dual language students going to the town line building from non-town line neighborhoods, filling that up in any kind of efficient manner.
We use software to kind of look at the variables, you know, capacity of buses, the number of kids on a bus, the distance, the route times as well. All of those play a factor into the software that kind of drives the routes that are determined.
Any other questions? Regarding transportation, or actually transportation fee? Okay. Let's do the 2018-19 returning student form. That was a form that was in our packet. It showed we've normally sent it out to all our students to kind of confirm that they would be returning, and specifically to kind of gauge our kindergarten enrollment, because you know, if you have a sibling or you think your is coming in, that's a good form to kind of gauge it. So I don't know if there was a discussion about it. So that'll be sent out.
Has this been sent out yet?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I was wondering, at a previous meeting, we talked about possibly asking, and it could be an optional question, whether they have any siblings that are not yet in kindergarten, so that we could see, you know, whether, because we have no other way to know, whether we could see whether there's additional students in the pipeline. So I don't know if we want to do that or not, but it's a way to try to get some information we currently don't have that might be useful. Because you're looking
How
at...
much younger would you look at, or
Well,
any?
you're looking at 0 to 4 years. There could be a potentially large number of students that we can now track and know that they're coming.
We could ask for, you know, siblings at home and ages. Is that...
Yeah, we'd need to know the
Right.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a kindergartner for the 2018-19 school year. However, in the year blank, I will have a kindergarten, you know.
Right. Only going to existing families, though, already in the system.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know how, in the past, how many percentage-wise people sent it back, or how accurate they've been?
We typically get a high percentage sent back because we use it for planning and we follow up to make sure it's sent back. As far as accuracy, we don't get too many changes after the start of the school year. So I think we're pretty good. I mean, from that pool of people, we get a lot of move-ins. So.
the next item is the Press 96. So the Press 96 is a lovely, thick packet to go through. So it's going to get, for everybody's sanity, including mine, we're going to break it up into pieces to do this. So on a rough calculation, Press 96 is 243 pages and 61 policies to go through. Just saying. I mean, so there are about 10, and the way the press has done this time is they've kind of bundled it, so it follows a topic that is relevant, but it doesn't necessarily follow the policy number. So I'm going to go through some of them today. It is about 13 of them today. It'll be quick because there aren't much changes to it that are needed. I'll tell you which policies these are. You can read them. By next meeting, we'll approve all these that we did today, and we'll go through the next batch of them. We'll give you 2 weeks to go over them and stuff. So I'll state what is important in these policies, where they are, and what they are about. So as an example, the first one we are going to do is these policies. These are 5 policies that relate to, and okay, one thing I wanted to tell you. So we have to only approve the board policies, but there are also administrative procedures which are given, which change because if the policy change or the footnotes change or the law change. So the administrative procedures, but the administrative procedures do not require board approval. And the exhibits which are provided, which are the information that needs to be provided, or forms that are provided, these exhibits are based on the administrative procedures, but that is also does not require board approval. The policies are the only thing that require board approval. We will also go through the administrative procedures and exhibits in case there's something we want to tell our administrative team to change or look into or be more cognizant of. Okay. So the first one is student records. It is policy number, and I can tell you the policy number and the page numbers that it's on so that you can go to it directly and read it.
Which attachment are you starting?
It is the attachment, like I said, the press sent it in bundles this time and it's easier. So I'm going off the updated memo, and then the page number I'll tell you is from the policy, which is the 156 pages that came through. And when it's the exhibit or the AP one, which is the 87 pages, I'll tell you it's from the 87 pages that it is coming for. Okay, I put in the words. Let's go. So the first policy is 6. It's the student records. And the student records, the one thing that changed in the student records was the school code changed. And this does not, sorry?
Tell us the page so we can find it, and then you can talk.
Okay. It's 9293. It's 6:280 grading and promotion. It's 9293. Okay. And in this thing, what actually changed was mainly, it doesn't pertain to us, but it was the policy that changed was an amendment by the law that the ISB administered SAT has to be administered on a school day, as well as the scores of the SAT do not have to be on a student's transcript. These were the 2 laws that went into laws that were changed or policies that were changed. And because of that, there are a few policies that got changed in. So that's 6:280, which is grading and promotion. That was the only thing that changed in that. The 6:340, which is 101 and 102. It's page number 101 and 102. It's student testing and assessment program. It is the same 2 things that I told you about. So they only changed, the footnotes were changed in that policy because the 2 other laws changed. 7:340, it's 152 to 156 page number. And in this thing, what changed was the parents or students can request to inspect and copy records, and that request has to be granted no later than 10 business days. This is a change from previously, which was 15 business days. but the school can extend the timeline or by additional 5 days based on one of the statutory reasons, and the reasons are listed in the policy if you want to read it. There is actually, so that was the thing that they changed about that policy. Nothing that we can, yeah. The policy itself is unchanged, but the footnotes and references of how soon you have to provide the records and what is the exception that you can ask for an extension is the one thing that changed. So that was the in the footnotes. They also added that the records needed to be in compliance of FERPA, ISRA, HIPAA, the U.S. Department of Education's PTAC policy, and there's a plethora of statutory and decisional law protecting all of that, and that is all in the footnotes. So if you want to read everything that the school records have to be. There's also specifically a section for districts that collect biometric information of how long can they keep the information and when they should need to destroy it or how, and that is also in that policy. But it was actually all the footnotes that changed. The policy itself did not change. So we don't, we just accept it. There's something that I wanted to ask our administrator because I did not. There's an official records custodian. Who is that in our district?
We have somebody who manages records as far as knowing when they needed to be, destroyed and retained. And that is Gloria, I believe, is still doing that. And then Alma, our registrar, works on student records as well. She's our main custodian of student records.
Okay. Because that was the thing that was there, and I didn't know who ours was, so I just wanted to know. The next policy is an exhibit, which is 7:340 AP1, and this is in the administrative policy packet from 64 to 77. And in this, they just made changes to reflect the above policy. The policy changed, so the exhibit would change accordingly. And the next one is 7:340 AP1 Exhibit 1. This is in the AP administrative policy packet from page number 78 to 83. And this is just notice to parents and guardians, and it's a form that you have to send out to let them know how they can request the records and how long do they have to get the records back. Okay, that's 5 policies done.
All right.
The next is the student state budget mandate relief. So this is a policy. These are amendments which happened into the policies based on the Evidence-Based Funding Act. And this is policy number 2:20. E, it's in the exhibit. It's page number 1 through 5. And it is an exhibit which addresses the waivers of school board mandates, which include additional criteria, allowing the district to show, how they are able to address the intended. And they've cleaned up multiple discussions about publishing notices. Like if you want to do a mandate, you have to publish notices everywhere, and they've cleaned up that information. So it's in page number. The exemption from, and this is, you can petition a panel of General Assembly through SB, or you can petition the SB, and, these are changes to driver's ed, the PE waivers, Teachers Institute Day, conference days, state development, staff development days. All of that comes under that one. There's actually no change to the policy. It's all in the exhibits that got changed because of the laws the policy stayed the same. The next one is 2:250-E2. It's also in the AP packet from page number 10 to 14. It is availability of district public records and web posted records and reports and records. And this is all, they should all fulfill the FOIA requirements. So it's all an exhibit and list of everything that needs to be posted according to FOIA. There's a whole long list that you can read through. The next one is 6:60, which is the curriculum content, and this is in the policy packet of 81 to 87. And in this one, there's a change in the language of PE required daily to as determined by the board to a minimum of 3 days, because the PE waiver went into effect, so the language had to be changed. So this is that language change that is suggested, that instead of it would be based on the requirement of that PE is required daily to that what is approved by the board. And it also changed that there's a language regarding a case-by-case basis of excuses for students who are participating in the interscholastic or extracurricular athletic activities, and it is based on a case-by-case basis. Previously, only 11th and 12th grade students could get that waiver from their PE classes for playing and activities, and now it's from 7th through 12th grade. Everybody can get it. It is determined on a case-to-case basis. So that's a change. From 11th and 12th, it went from 7th through 12th. That's a change that happened.
With the PE change going to board approval, do we have to do that every year? Do we do a blanket approval until we change it?
No, if you do an approval, if you do it a waiver, it's valid for 5 years. So it's not every year. You don't have to do it every year, but if you think that you did it 1 year and you want to go back to something, I think you can do it. But if you did it 1 year, it stays valid for 5. That's my understanding of it.
So it's required for us to take an action to state that we're going to do 5 days or whatever, or not?
No,
There's no
we
default?
don't have to take any action. If we ask for a waiver, then we have to take an action. Right now, it's just a policy change of PE as determined by the board. Right now, we are on 5 days, so we stay on 5 days.
The state still's, advocating daily PE.
Yeah.
They're just opening up the waiver process a little bit. So we right now have daily PE, so unless we wanted to make a change and go for
don't have to do
less,
anything.
then we can maintain.
You don't have to do anything. The next is 6:310. This is in the policy packet, page number 97 to 100. And this is high school credit for non-district experiences, course substitution, and re-entering students. So this is again the waiver for kids who are 310. Yes. This is for, again, the waiver for PE for kids who are participating in interscholastic or extracurricular activities. But it also is to inform all the 11th and 12th grade students of dual enrollment and dual credit opportunities at public community colleges. The high school needs to form it. It's in the policy and footnotes that got changed. So it's just essentially being more open. And then the last one is 7:260. This is in the policy packet 139 to 140. And this is exemption from physical education. And this one states, again, the policy and the footnotes are updated to say that the kids in 7th and 8th must submit a written request to the principal to be excused from interscholastic or extracurricular participation, and it's evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So the policy is changed to reflect the law that states that. Okay, that's the next 5. And the last 3, they are by the Department for DCFS. And this is the new amendments that went in. They are statutory, so there's nothing we can do but accept them. This is a relationship between the DCFS and the schools. So the law permits that the DCFS cooperate with school officials to distribute informational ANCRA materials in school buildings. And if the DCFS distributes the buildings, we have to put them up so they're visible, like, the hotline numbers and things. When they distribute it to us, we have to put it. Also, the second law that got amended was it allows DCFS to recommend to district that they remove an employee from his or her position when he or she is subject to a pending DCFS investigation that relates to his or her employment in the school district. And there is a liability may exist if we receive a recommendation and we do not follow through. So that is changed, and these are statutory amendments. I think we have to, but we needed to read them, so we read them. The first policy is 5:90. It is abused and neglected child reporting. This is on page 41 through 44 of the policy packet. And it says that one of the things it states is that if a student is in immediate danger, the reporting authorities have to call 911, and the mandated reporters for the disabled have 4 hours to report a neglect or abuse. So that one was the thing that got changed in those two policies. That got changed in that policy, sorry, the 5:90 policy. The other thing that is 5:240. This is suspension. This is in the policy package, page number 54 to 56. This is suspension of an employee. Like I said, the rule, the amendment went in that the DCFS can recommend the removal of an employee, and the board or the superintendent, in consultation with the attorney, can allow this employee to stay, or they can suspend the employee with or without the pay. And their liability issues may exist if the district receives the recommendation and does not do it. So they have a strong recommendation of talking to your lawyer if you want to do it. And the next one is the 5:290, employment termination and suspension. This is in policy pages number 63 and 65. And in this, only the footnotes have been changed. They have been changed for the same reason as that suspension thing that I just talked about. So that's the 13 policies. If anybody has any questions, some of them are mandated, some of them the footnotes just changed. The policy itself hasn't changed. But if you want to go through it, we will approve all of these next meeting, and we'll go over some more new ones to see what we want to do about them. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you for doing all that work.
Yeah, seriously.
Huh?
Thank you for doing
Yes,
this.
good.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the board meeting preparations. This was a future discussion item that was requested. So we normally have when we have a board meeting, we normally have a packet which has all the information relating to some of the items that we see before, so we can ask the questions, as well as some of the presentations you see, which is normally comes to us somewhere the week prior, somewhere from midweek till about Friday, as well as then we get some additional information and updates of things that are going on. Some of them we discuss openly in an open session. Some of them are closed, but normally the updates come from Nick. He normally sends an update based on every topic as what the standing or the situation of the topic is. So this was the board meeting presentation. In your packet, you will find there's a sheet that says when the meeting was, when the packet was uploaded, when the updates were received, and when was the additional information or email that came to us. So there have been a couple times when the packets or presentations came late to us or on the day of the meeting, so that didn't give us enough time to prepare our questions. But other than that, most of the meetings we've had in materials given to us in enough time. The recommendation is that it comes enough, but if we do get the presentations late to us or the information is not there, we normally do not make a decision based on that anyway. It's a discussion the first time we receive it. We normally do the approval the next meeting. So I think though not ideal, I think, stuff happens sometimes that causes delays. But this was a future topic. So Julie, you wanted to have any discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I know that when it's outside presentations, we don't really have a lot of control. But it'd be nice if there was some sort of policy that for in-house presentations that we had at least 3 days, so that not only we could review the information and prepare questions for, open session, or gives us enough time to send questions and for people to have answers to them.
As you can see, most of the questions have come before. there has been only a few times for the outside. I don't think making a policy, at least that's my personal opinion, makes sense, because making a policy sets it down in stone, and sometimes we have to be a bit more flexible as to when the data is given to us or presented to us. There might be some things that might not be in our control. So, I mean, it is definitely a strong recommendation that the team should follow, that, presentations or materials that you get should be dealt with before the weekend so that people can look at it and follow it. I don't know if making a policy makes sense. But that's my opinion. I don't know what the rest of the board.
Well, I don't know. Did you really mean a policy, or did you just mean a practice that?
More, a practice, or, if it's not there, considering moving it to the next meeting.
Sometimes the decisions have to be made, and it's always a first discussion. If you get it, it's never we never vote on something till the next meeting anyway. So
it's not even necessarily information that's stuff that's voted on. Like, for example, when we get the middle school achievement during the meeting, you're looking at slides and you're thinking of things because it's the first time you've seen it, and so then we move on, and sometimes it's hard to focus on the next thing because we're just absorbing the information we're seeing for the first time. And so it's not even necessarily something that's voted on. We don't vote on middle school achievement, I guess, but it would just be nice to have those things a few days before.
No, I completely agree. It's nice, but you do have you do have the time even when you see the presentation for the first time. Like I said, we have to be a bit more flexible. If you can always send the questions in later, and they are answered and addressed at the next meeting. We did open up for anything that was later. We did open it up, but does anybody have any questions from the previous program? So you can always bring up the question.
That's fine. If that's how you feel.
I do agree. I think it's hard to have a thoughtful discussion when we're just seeing it for the first time, or even if we get it that same day. Like, I know, especially for the people on the board that work, I'm sure it's very hard to get things on Monday for Monday's meeting. But do I need a written policy? I don't know if I need a written policy. I sort of wish this wasn't an issue. But I don't know that I need a written policy, but I think I need definite, clear understanding that if we're to have any sort of thoughtful discussion or ask meaningful questions, or especially if we're going to vote on something, obviously, I think we should have that in ample time. I don't know if I need a full 3 days, but I do think 3 days is a decent suggestion if it's something where we're going to have to send in questions and expect somebody to actually have an answer by Monday.
No, definitely. If nobody disagrees with that.
Because I think everybody's sort of, I know, I hear it sometimes from the public, and I think it sometimes myself too, is sometimes it gets tiresome to ask questions and the only answer is, I'll look into that. Like, it would be nice to have those answers at the same time as the discussion is going on. I think something is lost, especially in the public, when it doesn't get addressed again until 2 weeks later. So I don't know that it needs to be a written policy, but I think there definitely needs to be a stronger, clearer direction and understanding that we get these things with ample opportunity to review them.
For the most, well, and then I do think, though, too, that, later on when we email questions, if Nick answers them or whoever is supposed to answer them gets back to us, sometimes it's not apparent to the public that we are asking those questions because it's not really brought up again 2 weeks later, every single question that's been asked. And then it's just dragging on a topic another week when it could be, concise and kind of over when it's presented.
Other than the Humanix, Elizabeth, Hennessy, and the Middle School South Achievement, since May of 8th through January 8th today, that has been about the only significant presentations that have came in the day off. There's nothing else that came that day. They were all in the packets, and the packets have come with ample time.
Maybe for presentations, but if I were to go back through my email inbox, I guarantee you on the days of these meetings, my email inbox would be filled with updates and stuff. It may not be a full-on presentation, but the updates come that day. And I get the whole point of an update is that it's the most up-to-date information, so it's not going to be super old. But that is tough when on a Monday I get 5 things in my inbox that I'm expected to look through prior to 6 p.m., so whatever. I'm not going to die on my sword over it either, but
I know I'm not either, but and I understand that that's just one day, but that was 3 presentations that we're sitting here all trying to absorb all this information. I mean, if it was one on that day, maybe I wouldn't have even brought it up. But, I mean, it was just kind of a lot.
Well, how about for presentations that are scheduled in advance, which some of these are like student achievement or dual language or something like that, the presentation be provided by the Wednesday before or something, so that, and
was even
where
do it
there's
the
not
Friday.
last minute updates, so that we can come to the meeting with questions and make it meaningful, or we postpone the presentation. I mean, where it's been scheduled that far in advance. Now, some of these other things, I don't see any way to avoid providing information up till the day of the meeting. In some cases where it's updates or enrollment numbers or something like that. So
And what
I don't
Jeff
have a
said
problem
was,
like that. With that, I understand that.
and with how Jeff put it was kind of my meaning behind it, that when we have these scheduled presentations, that, I mean, we should have the information plenty of time.
Yeah, I mean, that is a policy, but I think we need to be a bit understanding of the fact too. But that will be conveyed to the administrative team. I mean, they're all listening, so. I don't think it needs to be conveyed. They're all here. Okay.
Wednesday.
The next is the Educational Facilities Master Plan. This is a topic that's an ongoing topic. We've been talking about it for a while. We still need to, we have kept going on. So the thing is, we looked at our enrollments. Our enrollments are higher. We have the Facilities Master Plan, which was with us. We all have the adjustments that were made to each of the schools. Now, the thing is, and if you look at your architectural plans that were given to us by DLR long time ago. So in each of the cases, if you look at it, it gives you what is the amount that was asked based on what the capacity is, what the projected capacity is. Nothing of us has changed. The additions, what does that addition get each one of us? There's an addition and a renovation cost to each of the building. So, for example, in Town Line or dual language, they're asking for about 5.8 million was the construction estimated cost, because that would change because now it's also been 2 years and stuff since we asked for it. But the capacity of that school is 925. The projected capacity is 1,076. That addition at Town Line and dual language was going to get us 6 additional classrooms, or renovation of a room to a STEM room or a science lab, a student support room, a health room, and the renovation of the media library, which will be more towards 21st century, so, with more computers or more computer-ish things. That was what the Town Line dual language 5.8 million was going to get us. So each school has its approximate amount, which will change because the construction costs will change. The capacity, the projected capacity, and what that addition was going to give us. So if you kind of look at it, we all agreed that our schools are full. We all agreed that we need to do something. There's nothing that can be, the kindergarten building would solve the elementary school's problem, but not the middle school's problem. So the question is, where do we go next? We've been talking about this for a couple of times and we haven't kind of decided. This is just looking at the numbers and the EFMP. This is not how we communicate, what we get, what are we doing. This is what the needs are. And we have to come to that. Is we all agreed that we do agree that there is a need. We agreed that something needs to be done. Not doing anything was not a solution at this point. So now the question is, what is it that we want to do? The 42 million, you have all this information. Everything was with everybody. So now, what do you think is what you want to do? As a board, we have to decide, do we want to go and do all our schools again? We want to break it down into components of it and then address it. We need to decide what we want to do. Then we will see how we are going to communicate that to the community and get their feedback based on what they want to do about it. But we really do need to have some sort of, because everything that we keep pushing off, we have a November 2018 as kind of a deadline, not a deadline. That was the first time we would even go out for a referendum if we do. We don't have the money. There is no money left in the coffers. So there's nothing we can do to solve the situation unless we go out to ask for help or somebody writes us a check. And either way, we'll be happy. But if they don't, till we wait for somebody to write up with it, we should have a plan of what we do. If we don't go out in November, we push it, because even if we start in November, even everything goes, we get everybody's support, we do get the money, it is still 2 years out by the time a building is said and done. So every time we delay making a decision, we are pushing those kids and our teachers and our staff into 2 years of the same thing again and again. So we at least need to decide, what do we want to do? And then we can, the community input, the conversation, the communication, that is a separate piece. This is just facts and numbers. We need to decide on that. So anybody want to take a go at it? You have all these numbers. They are all with you. If anybody wants something to be broken down, I can give it to you. I have it.
I think we should take, just an idea, we take all of the projects that were in the Educational Facilities Master Plan and we prioritize 1 through whatever. And a group does that. I'm not saying the board. A group, I don't know who that is, but prioritizes them and decides what's most important. Obviously, we can't do all of them unless we ask for another.
All of it.
Right. So that at least gives us a priority based on need. And then we look at the projects and see what makes sense and how much it adds up to based on what we want to do.
So when you're asking for a group to do a priority, could you expand on that further?
Well, it's an idea for discussion. I'm not big on extensive committees that go 6 or 7 months, but
yeah.
It's we can discuss the best way to do that. It can be a group of looking at each building and then we put them all together. So administration, teachers, a board member or two, or I'd prefer it not be the entire board doing it as a board exercise. And we can get community input as well from people involved in the various buildings or in the community. But again, not something that stretches on for months and months and months.
Okay, but that, just to understand it, that would basically be from the EFMP, right?
Right.
We're
not revisiting the entire process of coming up with.
No, but that's what I mean. What you want to prioritize is all that we already have.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the thing.
I think what Jeff is saying is take all of these blue things from every building, put a number on them. This addition is number 1 priority. Even in the same building, we can have priorities. So even if we look at Middle North, for example, we've got, a dozen different possible things that could be added to it. So I think what Jeff is saying, okay, the classroom addition, the 6-room classrooms, that's higher priority than the gym. But then the gym would be next for that building. So, and then maybe those classrooms at a different building would be then following. So I think what you're saying is go through this whole thing, which we already have, just put a priority on every one of these changes.
Right, and maybe an entire building's needs is more important than anything another building has.
Yeah.
Districts don't always add on to every building at the same time.
Right.
So,
yeah.
No, but here's the thing. And just as a, to be kind of, I agree. Middle North in that plan, has 9 classrooms, a PE and a fitness room, a student support room, a music room, a renovation to media and library, renovation of the fitness room into whatever their current small fitness room is into the STEM area, cafeteria renovation because it needs to be, and renovation of locker rooms to ADA compliancy because they are not. We do have a ramp though from summer. So these are the additions of Middle North. Those additions cost us $11 million. Now, from what I remember from talking to Jason was, I agree, you can say the 9 classrooms is important, but the music room maybe not so, right? So maybe that's the 4th priority or the 6th priority because this has 8 of them. So maybe it's the 7th priority in that. But isn't it some of it was, as Jason said, was if you do them together or around, that movement of material or getting the material in there was a cost effectiveness in doing it versus doing one building together versus, doing 9 classrooms in Middle North and doing just the cafeteria addition in Middle South, but then you're coming back and doing the P in Middle South and then doing something. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So would you?
Part of that priority is taking that into consideration, I would think.
Yeah. But also, not every one of these things has to be done. I mean, sometimes you have to live without some things. Unfortunately, yes, we'd like to do all of these. That's why we went to a referendum in the first place. But sometimes, based on the financial condition of the district, you can't do all of them. So it's got to be people who are willing to objectively look at all of these projects and make some tough decisions. And that not everybody's going to like those decisions.
But here is my other thing. I mean, I'm okay with that, and I think it's a good idea. Is a little bit of that is, I think we are going to have to pay money to somebody on DLR staff all over again, wouldn't we? Be on this committee because we are going to need some. No.
I wouldn't think so. No,
They've
not at all.
already done the work. They've already identified.
No, but like if you say you want
might have to answer
only
some questions.
Some questions is like you want only classrooms here, but you want the media, and then you say no. That is, but it might be more effective to do the 9 classrooms and the PE fitness together right now. No?
I think the priorities list that Jeff and I are talking about is independent of the timing, the construction, the cost, all that stuff. It's more about need. So, of all these things, what do we need? Okay, if we look at this, all these additions and say, Middle North needs 6 classrooms. That is the top priority. That goes on top of the list. Then the next thing, what do they need? So maybe the band room, or is it the cafeteria, or is it the gym? Which one of those? Once you have that list, then now you understand where the priorities are for that building. Then you can say, okay, if I only have half the amount, what falls off for that building? So now, once you have a priority list for the building, now you can look at all the other buildings and do the same thing. Say, okay, if I can do all of that, because that's now my highest, now what's the next thing I can do? Maybe I could do half of Middle South, and then I'm done. And that's all I've got. That's all the money I can get. But it seems like you don't need DLR because they've already done, here's what we do to add, to accommodate, to take care of our needs. Now we're just going down and saying, what's most important and in what order?
So
sorry, go ahead.
So if we were to do it that way, my question is, let's say people rank the things 1 through 15. Are we going to take those and say, okay, once we hit 25 million, that's it, and everything after that ranking falls off? Or are we saying rank them 1 through 15, and then we'll see what the total dollar amount is as it stands now, since those figures are a couple years old at this point, and then that's the amount we ask for? Like, what's the
total
goal?
amount right now? I mean, even if it stays the same, it's 42 plus, right? And these are all the need. I mean, we need every single one of them. It's not like
No, we don't.
this is a part.
No, we don't need all
That's the
the
thing. is we
elementary ones anymore if we build a Sullivan Center.
Some things we don't, but some things.
So
but now here's the
it's
other
going to
thing.
fluctuate a little bit.
A little bit. My other thing is, we would need to have a representation from every single school, because somebody from other school will not be able to tell what your needs are. Because I have not been there, so I don't know what your need is.
But the last meeting, was my understanding that Nick was going to reach out to the administrators at each of the buildings to see if their needs have changed.
Yes, he was going to reach, but since he's not here, I'm just.
Okay. So wouldn't that be the representation from the buildings then?
But then.
Well, if a committee is formed, though, you would.
I mean, that would be their needs, right? But now the thing is, if you're going to prioritize, we still need somebody from there to prioritize, right? Because their needs are their needs. I mean, we didn't ask them to prioritize, and somebody else from outside cannot prioritize if your child or you don't go to that school.
Okay,
Well, I
so
think we should
maybe
ask the
a way to
administrators,
do it
though,
is to have administrator of each building prioritize their building's additions,
Okay.
right? So,
Mhm.
So
So ask
Dr.
Mr.
Martin will
Collins
say,
how to
okay,
rank,
here's Elementary South. Here are my priorities based on what you've got here. Here's my list.
Okay.
And then, Tally would do Middle South. So, and then Nick would get them all together and say, okay, everybody's got their list.
Okay.
Now,
That
as
works.
a team, from a district point of view, which one bubbles to the top?
Okay. That makes, like rather than doing, because they have to, because I did ask and I know he was I'm sure he worked on it. He's just not here right now. And so if these lists have changed or they have added something because what they need, like, instead of 9 classrooms, they want 10 classrooms or 11,
Right.
Whatever that number is, whatever the updated list is now. And we'll ask them to force rank it itself, the admins itself, because they are in there. And then we should have that by, and then we'll look at it next meeting, kind of what they force ranked, or you want them to make it bubble it to the top.
I'd like them to take a cut at it, and then we would take a look and say, well,
Yeah, so
yes,
once-
we're going to agree with most of it, but maybe there's something that
Because they will prioritize it, right? I mean, it's not like they don't, they're not going to ask for something that they don't need. They're very well aware. So we will have to figure out. So once they do that, once they look at their needs and they prioritize it, so then at the next meeting or so, when we get it, we can look at it and see, is that how we're going to do it?
Can I add a little twist in here for a second, or a reminder? I don't know what you want to call it. In all of the referendum discussions and panels that we sat in at the III conference I know I sat in them for 2 years in a row, and some people sat in them just this year. It's been suggested over and over and over again that we ask the community, what do you want your school district to look like? So while I value the principal's rankings, and I do think that's important, ultimately they're not our voters and they're not our taxpayers. So at what point do we ask the community to rank these things? What do you want them to look like? And in the meantime, caveat, when do we possibly revisit, if we're going to, a repurposing of a building around town? Because what was available 2 or 3 years ago when they considered that may not be the same thing now, and new opportunities might have popped up. Because I'm sitting there going, like, if that many things are wrong with one building, does it make sense to still use that building for that purpose, or should they have a totally different redesigned space? So I think there's a lot of moving parts here, and I do like the idea of the principals kind of saying, here's our priorities, so at least we could see if something major fell off, then we don't even need to really consider it. But in deciding whether or not we're going to go back out and ask for STEM labs, or go back out and ask for cafeterias and gym space and whatever, when do we ask the community, what kind of district do you want to see for yourselves?
That is the part of the communication and the community input. Right now, we need to really figure out, because if we can't tell what our needs are to the community, I don't think somebody from one end is going to know what the other is needing. And if we decide to prioritize at one point to say, like, no, we are going to, because we have only this much and we're only going to do the middle schools or just the elementary schools, or just, the South, elementary South, because it has the most needs, we still need to know where we are doing to what dollar amount. What they need of that is a part of communication, and we're going to get to that. But this we do need to know. And the people who are not in the building will not know whether they need 6 classrooms or 9 classrooms.
No, I know.
We need to know that.
I do think it's important for us to state what the needs are. I just think as far as us determining the priorities, then that kind of takes away the question of what do you want your school district to look like? Because what do you want your school district to look like is really saying, what are your priorities? Maybe to us, we have this ideal middle school setup, and to them, they'd say, you know what, I'd rather have a cramped middle school and get my STEM labs. I mean, I don't know. Like, wouldn't appear that the feedback was that way, but we never really kind of did a gigantic community input opportunity at the brainstorming, phase. I don't know.
I'm thinking that works well when you're saying, okay, I've got this building that I need to do something about and get community input and saying, what do we do with that? What are your priorities for that? Or I've got these two, a middle school and an elementary that all your kids go to. What are your priorities? I think what Denali's suggestion is if someone at Elementary South sees the problems there, they could care less about Middle North or Town Line or North. They'll never be there. Okay, they're going from Elementary South to Middle South. That's all they care about. So then how do we solicit community feedback when we're trying to address the district as a whole when certain things don't impact certain communities and certain populations? That's a challenge that I don't know how to get around when we're trying to get community impact, but at the same time, a lot of those feedbacks is now clouded by the fact of, I only care about this because that's all that's going to affect me. I don't know how to address
for
that.
a lot of the districts that were giving us that advice, they had multiple buildings and multiple neighborhoods with that same challenge of, do people truly only care about what impacts them and their family, or do people collectively care about the health of the district overall because it affects the entire community, their property values, the overall education? That's kind of a philosophical question, and I don't really have an answer to it.
I don't either.
I would hope people
struggle
would
with that.
care about more than just the building their children attend, but you can hope in one hand and, never mind. I'm not going to finish that expression. But I think I understand what you're all saying, and I'm not married to doing it one way or the other, but I do think most of these districts that were giving us that advice, I think Champaign said they have like 19 buildings in their district. I mean, and they asked that question and they got an answer. And if we open it up to the whole community, you have to assume you're going to get somewhat representative responses in the population.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm going to cut it off in a little bit because we still have a closed session to go get into. So at one point, we all agree that telling our administrators to see if this is still their need or it has changed is a good idea. Because they're the ones in there, they're the ones teaching the students.
Yep.
Then to tell them, could you please prioritize? If we could only give you, some money, but not all of it. And we would love to give them, everybody, everything. What would be the things that you would want most, which are the most effective, right? That is one thing. Let's get to that and see what they come up with. Okay, but in 2 weeks at least, I'm sure we can get to that. The next thing is your question. Getting to the community, which is the community, and we're going to do it in quick 10 minutes. So ideas and see if we can come to what is it? We did a survey after the referendum. We got our responses. We have to do something. As far as you said of looking at an adaptive reuse, I can ask. I'm sure there's a way to look into it and see if something has come up which is different than what it was available before, because those two buildings are still available. So if something else has come up or not, we can look into it and just see if something is available, but that's a different question. How do we reach out to the community?
Okay,
What is it that you want? Yes?
Okay, I'd like to do like a special meeting like was done in the past, but maybe a little bit before things, and just put a feeler out to see how they feel. Like, I know you guys answered their questions, but we don't know if that made a difference to anybody. Like, you could have answered their questions and they could still be like, nope, or they could be like, that totally, changed my perspective on everything. So just kind of to get a feeler out of how they feel. And then maybe toss around the idea, say, hey, because of the dynamic of our district, that we're thinking of asking the building administrators. How do you guys feel about that?
That is different. We are asking the building administrators. Building administrators are the best people to know what's going on in there. We are not asking them to do anything. But
right,
all
but
we are asking them is
just asking them how they think maybe we should go forward a little bit. And that doesn't mean that we have to listen, but just to hear them.
Well, so what you could do with this list, okay, once we have this priority list, you could also put not just a priority 1, 2, 3, 4, you could also have a weight or a criticality to each one of those items. Okay, having 6 classrooms at Middle North is number one priority, but it also has a lot more weight than a STEM addition at Aspen, for example. Okay, so if you have, here's my addition, here's my priority, here's my weighted factor or my criticality to have that in the district. Now, if you have that list now, you can say, okay, for $5 million, I can get this. For $10 million, I can get this. For 15, I can get this. Then from the community, you can have this meetings, you can present it all. Here's the addition, and this is why we need it. Here's how important it is. Go through the whole list, and then, all right, where do you see the cut line? Do I spend $10 million and address these, 10 priority items, and the rest, yeah, they're nice, but looking at the criticality of them, community says not really needed. Or they say, yeah, 15 million is what I need. So that's kind of where I see the community coming in and looking at it from a holistic point of view and saying, here's what we really need from a district point of view, and here's kind of where the line is for them.
Because asking them, I agree. Did it make a difference that I spent 2 hours talking and, people probably are sick of my voice after I spent that time? But the thing is, it's not going to make any difference. Did that make any difference? Either the people who will come there are the ones whose mind would never have changed, or the few that might have changed. But that setting up a meeting, getting that, it takes a long, long, long time. So when we set up that meeting has to be tight, focused, completely have a direction to it. Just going in there. So I am more for, as Jason put it, we have something to show them, to tell them. Because if we couldn't change their mind, I don't know what more are we going to talk that's going to change. We presented facts and our reasoning behind it. These weren't, I wanted to do it kind of a thing. And let them decide at that point. But we need to have a complete direction when we have that meeting, because these meetings are time, a lot of effort, and a lot of time in between planning those meetings. A survey sounds easy to do, but there's a lot of time consumed in it, because you have to have it open for a certain amount of time. You have to get the data back. You have to answer that. It took us that long to do things. So we need to be really focused when we start doing these special meetings. What is it that we want answered at every meeting, or what is it that we are trying to achieve at every meeting?
I think we need to start communicating our needs now and getting the message out there now. So when we ask the administrators to give us, their needs list and rank them, I think we should also ask them, what's the one thing that you want the community to know, whether it's, space constraints or, what's the one thing that, you want 73 community to know. And then I think, we should work on messaging and, did you know that Middle North, has to use the cafeteria for gym while kids are eating lunch or whatever it may be, and just start, putting it out there on Facebook, putting it out there on social media, so that, we're not waiting until the last minute to, blast our message. Because we have to start now.
No, I agree.
And this is something that we can do regardless of, what we decide to move forward with the referendum. Because I still think the community should know.
No, definitely.
Because we have, voters, and I don't know if they're on, social media. They may or may not. I don't know. But we have to try and get that message out there because, there's going to be voters that don't have kids in the school.
We can definitely have special meetings to, and we are going to need to have them, and a lot of them with a lot of effort from everybody involved. So, we'll have them at different places. We'll have them at different times. We'll do it as much as needed to get it. But we need to know what is it that we are looking for. And because since if nothing has changed, and if between a couple of weeks we find out that, there's no adaptive reuse to go back to, then.
Right. So I kind of see these special meetings as a little bit different. I totally get what you're saying, that you want to go in there knowing what you want to say and keeping it focused and keeping it streamlined. And I certainly, trust me, from being on the board throughout this process, am equally as fatigued of the whole thing as everybody else is. But that being said, I think it would be a mistake to go into any of those meetings with our minds made up, because I think if the whole point is to, and I'm not saying this isn't the point, this is just my perspective, but if we decide that the point is to ask the community, what is it that you want to see, we do have to be prepared to start with a blank slate and let them build up the picture of their perfect school district from what they say and their suggestions and their brainstorm. And I think a big message we got from that survey was they didn't get to see everything that was thought of and fell on the cutting room floor, so to speak. And had we thought of this, had we thought of that, I get that we want them to just trust that, yes, it was thought of and it was dismissed for a reason. But ultimately, if they're the taxpayers and they're the voters and they want to have input into that, I think it would be a mistake to go into any of those special meetings saying, here's our message, we're going to hit you over the head with it. I get the need to blast the message that there's a need, because I think that's not so easy to see if you're not in a specific building. But I think coming there with an idea of priorities, rankings, this, that, and the other thing is not truly saying, what do you want your district to look like? And maybe we don't want to ask that question.
No,
but
it is our priority.
If
and if they don't want to look, they don't want classrooms in it, we won't do that because they won't give us the money for it. But we at least have to show them what is the priority, what is. Because if you go in and say, what do you want something to look like?
Maybe their priority is awesome playgrounds with water slides. We don't know. We just don't know. All we know is whatever we put forth on the last referendum was not their priority, right? And then we got a little bit of feedback about that, and it was good feedback, but we got some feedback that, hey, maybe STEM's not such a priority and whatever, and we probably could have determined that if we were to sit here and just say, okay, we're going to pare down the plan and we're going to put forth a new plan. But, I don't think that it's really asking them what district they want to envision if we're coming at them with our priorities.
And also, if we just put a dollar amount, let's say we cap it at 25 million and we're not really solving our needs. It helps us for a little while. I do think that there's a way to rebuild a relationship with the community to get what we truly need instead of just picking it apart to reach a specific dollar amount.
And if the community buys in, we might even be able to go for a bigger ask. We don't know.
I just think that we're going about it like kind of in a similar fashion to last time, where it's just going to be us spewing information and numbers. And if they don't believe us, they don't believe us. And you're right, there's nothing we can do, but that's not going to help us in the long run.
So you want to go into a meeting and do what?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I have a meeting.
Specifically.
It's a meeting for what?
I think if you said meeting is to address the space needs in the district, solicit any and all possible ideas and input that we can start categorizing, parceling through, whittling down, and you'd have to obviously make it available at a few different times and dates.
No, I agree.
But I think I would probably make it literally that basic. And whether we set up small tables of 8 and 10 and have somebody there collecting the information from whoever's sitting at that table, or if we want to do something totally crazy and just pass around a mic and let people have X amount of minutes per person to talk. But that I would not recommend.
I just moved into the district. I'm an older
resident
demographic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any kids.
Mm-hmm.
Never going to have anybody go through the school. I'm involved, active.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what your needs are. You have this meeting. You're not showing me anything. You're not.
No, I
doing
said
anything.
we should
It's
state
like,
our needs, but I don't think we should state our priorities. I think those are two different things. We need space, but that's not saying what our priorities are.
You need space, but that's generic, right? So for somebody who's not there,
you need gym space. You need cafeteria space. Do you need
that
classroom
still
space?
isn't prioritizing.
No.
I'm saying I don't think we should go in there and hit them over their head with our priorities. I think if we want them to say what they envision as their perfect district and what they would support, they have to come up with those priorities. We can say, we need gym space and cafeteria space at North. We need this, that, and the other thing. That's not a prioritization. That's
so
not
just
saying
list
I
the-
value this
Got it.
over this.
And if our prioritization list, we could be still cutting off large priorities by capping a dollar amount. which I mean seems to be the direction we're going in.
I don't know if any of us have capped
We
the dollar
haven't
amount
decided.
yet. I think we sort of like,
Well,
we're
bulk-
trying to kind
I
of
mean,
arbitrarily come up with a ballpark, but I don't know
I
if
think we need to
that's
put
it.
feelers out there too to the community, because ultimately it depends on what they want, because they're going to be voting for this.
Okay.
Or not.
So, as far as the conclusion of this, I'm sure Nick already did, or if it's not complete, I will make sure that we get from our administrators the updated list of requirements that their needs are, whether it's PE space, whatever it is. We can ask them some of the things that they absolutely need that affect the most number of kids. Right? Would it be okay to ask our administrators to prioritize it? Okay, so the administrators will prioritize it. I will set out some dates. I'll sit down with some of our admin team and set up some dates. January, February dates, kind of different places, slightly different times, and we'll start having meetings. Does that sound fine?
Well, why don't we have a discussion first and see where we're at after that first step?
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the 22nd, be prepared to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll reach out to like 73 and a half, and theirs was a little bit different than ours. Their district's a little bit smaller. And
They had
maybe
one building.
Right, and then maybe, well, I was going to say also maybe I'll try to reach out to Urbana-Champaign and see what community meeting they had after their fail to see, exactly where they went, and maybe it'll inspire some sort of idea if they're willing to answer me.
Well, and I think these meetings, we can do this, to keep costs down. We can do this ourselves.
We are going to
I
do
don't
this
see a
ourselves.
need for DLR to be there at this stage. I mean, we don't need to pay them to be there.
No, and I mean, when I think of meeting, I think of like the ones that we had like, at Town Line or at Middle South, where it was in the gym and it was big and they were very well attended. And so hopefully, and we'll gauge and we'll see if nobody shows up, then, I mean, that says something right there too.
Okay. We'll wait for next meeting to see where we are on with the list from our administrators and the priorities. If you have specific ideas, come prepared to discuss specific ideas. Moving on, we have a closed session to get to.
Do we think next meeting's reasonable?
To get the priority list?
Right. I'm just asking.
Huh?
I'm just asking of the administration.
Yes.
Okay.
No, because it was told the last meeting, so I'm sure it's in the works. Okay. It's not like, it's like not like I dropped the bomb at 8:45 today. Okay, next is I call the conclusion of the committee of the whole. So this is the business meeting for the Board of Education. Anybody from the public wishes to comment? Renee.
Anyone?
Move to the consent agenda, which consists of board minutes from December 11th, personnel, which is leave of absence, retirement, and resignation. Do I have a motion?
I move the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Motion by Julie, seconded by Robin. Could I get a roll call vote?
Discussion? Could I make a comment?
The consent agenda, so we don't have discussion.
There's no discussion.
Well, it's called consent. Things that you typically don't discuss.
No, consent is that you don't vote on it.
No, you do vote on it.
I mean,
But you typically don't
it doesn't
discuss
need a
it.
roll call vote, but I thought you could.
No, it can have a roll call vote if there's financial stuff. So
Because normally there could be a review of the minutes or something, or discussion.
If somebody
on
wants
that.
something moved.
then that's before the make the motion. So that's part of the motion.
Right, but there was no ask of any comment. Anyway, could I get a change to the minutes?
Okay.
A small
You have to
change?
make a motion, right?
Well, the motion on the table is to approve the consent agenda as presented. So now you're going to have to amend it to not approve
Okay.
it as presented to.
Okay. Can I just say what it is?
You can. But we still need to do it right.
Okay, so if you look at the minutes on page 3 of 7.
Jeff.
Under the NASB annual conference, the third line, it indicates that there was a voice vote of no to attend the conference. We really can't have a vote for something that wasn't an action item, so it should say that the consensus was not to attend. It's a small change, shouldn't really affect anything.
Okay. So do I need to make a new motion? Jason, we should, right?
So it sounds like Jeff is amending the motion to approve consent agenda with the changes to the
Yes.
minutes as stated.
So Jeff amended with changes
So does somebody have to second his?
motion.
Moving to
Second.
Okay. Motion by Jeff, seconded by Julie. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron.
aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Robin Cleek.
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Molly Potter.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. That's it. There is any topics for, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Just a reminder, some reminders and activities coming up. Please check out the middle school web pages. There are many opportunities.
Wait, we have to vote
Oh,
on
that
the original
order.
amendment.
We have to vote.
I mean, original motion.
We voted to
Amend the motion.
amend the motion to approve the consent agenda. Now we have to vote to approve the consent agenda.
As amended.
And it doesn't need to be a roll call. It can just be all in favor.
Okay. Do I have a motion
You
to?
already have one on the table.
Yeah, I already had. So
Just a vote to approve the consent.
yeah, so Julie and Raman. So do I have a vote to approve the consent agenda as amended?
All those in
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7 ayes, 0 nays. Next time, make amendments before somebody makes a motion. This confuses me.
It's like, just think of it as like Russian nesting doll.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Once you open one up, you
have
make an
the
amendment,
minutes.
and you got the next one, but you still have the outer one. that you
Wendy
still
sent the packet a long time ago. You had time to send me a message.
All right, then, Sonali, should I wait to sign this? Since it was.
Superintendent's report.
Okay. So there are many opportunities to cheer on our Hawthorn Eagles. Concerts and winter sports coming up, boys and girls volleyball and wrestling. Our middle school music students are preparing for solo and ensemble contests. The contest this year is at Big Hollow, and a certain middle school principal is one of the judges. I'm going to say a BAM is required there. The MSN Cheer Squad is preparing for state on January 20th in Peoria. The MSN Science Olympiad team begins their competition season soon. Thank you to the 20-plus parent volunteers and high school students who make that team a success. HEI plans are underway. They will be offering over 50 classes and retooled their volunteer program. Classes will be posted this month. Registration begins on February 1st, and check the HEI webpage for logistics. Dual Language had an open gym on January 4th, where students were able to come and enjoy some extra physical education in the cold weather. January 11th, children's author Ann M. Martin of Babysitters Club fame will be at Dual Language Town Line to talk to our 4th and 5th grade students. I'm a huge fan, not going to lie. Aspen,
40-year-old.
I mean, right? That was what I was waiting. 40 years ago.
I still
right
have my
now.
collection.
No, 30 years ago right now. Aspen update. Congratulations to Mrs. Kirby's kindergarten class, Mrs. Williamson's 2nd grade class, and Miss Green's 4th grade classes for receiving the Eagle Award. Each of these classrooms demonstrated safe, responsible, and respectful behavior throughout the month of December. They'd also like to congratulate 5th graders Ryan C. and Aisha A. Both are students in Miss Dion's 5th grade art class. Miss Dion presented students with the opportunity to design and submit artwork for the cover of the Raising Student Achievement Conference booklet, which we've presented at in the past. Ryan's design was selected for the back cover. And Aishi's design was selected for the front cover. In addition to having their work displayed on the cover, both students and Ms. Dion received letters of thanks and gift certificates from Regional Office Superintendent of Schools, Royce Lee Woods. That's a big honor.
Wow.
Nice.
Activities coming up, January 11th, middle school North and South Early Winter Athletics Award Ceremony, current season athletes only at 7 p.m., and then late winter athletic parent meeting at 6 p.m. that same day. No school on Martin Luther King's birthday, January 15th. The 16th, Town Line Dual Language 4th and 5th grade orchestra concert in the Town Line Gym at 7 p.m. Our middle of trimester 2 coming up already on the 17th. Aspen and Elementary South band concerts in the Aspen Gym at 7 p.m. on January 17th. Also on the 17th, Elementary North, Town Line and Dual 4th and 5th grade orchestra concert in the Town Line Gym at 7. And on the 18th, an Elementary North band concert at 7 p.m. and Aspen Elementary South orchestra concerts in the Aspen Gym at 7 p.m.
As in Superintendent's report, you got an email from Dr. Kiefer inviting you for the Science Olympiad. It's on January 31st. If you have time, please volunteer.
We need judges.
We need judges. I have 3 teams, so for all the work I do.
Wait, January 31st. What day of the week?
The 30th, I think.
Oh, I was
Is
going to
it
say,
30th?
that's not a Saturday.
30th or 31st. I forget. I'm sorry.
It's not a Wednesday. I think it's a. Oh wait, it is Wednesday.
But it's a
It is
weekday.
a Wednesday. Yes,
Okay.
it's Wednesday afternoon at 5. I think. Yeah,
So please, it's 31st. It's on Wednesday.
it's a Wednesday. Yeah.
So please, if you have the time and can volunteer time for being judges, it's a fun time to have. Bring your little ones. It's fun to see. What's that?
What time is it again?
I think it's
6.
Yeah, 5 or 6. Yeah.
6-ish, I think. You got an email from
I did.
Dr. Kiefer, so it should be in there. Like, it'll be better. Okay. We adjourn to go into the closed session. Do I have a motion?
I move that we have to keep this one open. I move that we go into closed session.
You're gonna have to read.
Oh.
The, reason why.
Oh, I didn't print that out. Jeez,
We have it right here.
Thank you. I move that we go into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. 5 ILCS 120/2C1, as amended by PA 93-0057. And to discuss collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes or employees. 5 ILCS 120/2C2. And to discuss the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. 5 ILCS 120/2C6.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Jeff. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Sonali Patel,
Aye.
Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Wes Poll, and I.
We will now are in closed sessions.
Are we?
Are we
move
moving or?
Or we
We
just
move or
close
do
the
you
door?
want to stay here? Is this better for you?
Is it hot enough?
Make sure we're off.
It's cold in here.
It
was
really
roasting
warm
Friday
in
night in there.
So
hot.
We'll stay here then.
Okay, then how do we shut off that recording?
Yeah. They'll take care of it.
Okay.
Yeah, this
And we'll need to bring the other recorder in.
She's got